Starting on our work session, we have Black, please. Matt, I'm going to turn to the first item tonight is the continued discussion of the Chamber of Commerce request for funding. I'll turn that over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your packet, you will find a letter dated May 22nd from the Chamber of Commerce requesting funding from both the Town of Front Royal and the County of Warren. Since the date of this letter, the town and the county have been informed that we are in position, or we have received CARES Act funding. Last Friday, the mayor, the vice mayor, Mr. Wilson and I, and Mr. Napier met with county representatives regarding the CARES Act, and it was their desire to use the CARES Act to help fund the chamber until December 31, 2020, at the split of $30,000 for the county and $30,000 for the town. In concept, I think the group that was in the meeting felt that was a good way to handle it, but that we needed to bring it to our respective boards and get the sense of the town council, and they're going to get the sense of the board of supervisors. We have here this evening Ray Bramble, president of the chamber, as well as Nikki Foster, the executive director, should anyone have any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question about this per se, but we also received like an email asking for funds for the Front Royal Independent Business Alliance. Do you have any, you guys received that, right? Would the CARES Act also cover that request? I mean, is that something else we would have to look at?
Right, that's a separate request,
Okay.
and that is, this request is something out of the norm. The other request for FREBA is more towards tourism.
Right.
And we have money set aside in tourism marketing for that.
Okay.
So I'm prepared to
Okay.
use that funds for the tourism and community development to kickstart our local economy. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes.
Okay, good. I just was looking at the idea of just being fair if we were, gonna find one, so thank you.
Matt, in regards to the funds that we are going to receive, when do you expect us to have the information down to the committee so they can give us the approval?
Mr. Farrell, who is the emergency management coordinator, contacted me this afternoon, and he asked if we could start putting together a memo outlining exactly how, where we wanted to spend the funds so we can start the process. They're calling that the proposal. I don't believe he's going to come up with a template. He outlined specifically what he was looking for in this memo. I've already met with Mr. Wilson, and we'll be working on that tomorrow morning. So hopefully in the next 24, 48 hours, we'll be able to get him the first round of funds, or request for funds.
Okay, the second question is, do we have to hold a public hearing in order to put that into our budget in order to dispense that money that we received from the CARES Act?
I believe that's Mr. Wilson. Yeah.
Yes, we will indeed. I expect that we'll have to do a public hearing and a budget amendment. We can go ahead and get that process scheduled and on the future agenda.
Move up to the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Voice of God.
Yeah, amen. Yes, we will have to do a budget amendment. As soon as we get the memo over to Mr. Farrell and get everything moving on that and know the exact amounts, we can go ahead and get the budget amendment scheduled and on a future agenda.
BJ, in regards to that, I know the amount of money that we're going to receive, is it all going to come to us at one time the way I perceive it to be, or are we going to have a public hearing on each time we accept money from the CARES Act?
We will do one budget amendment. The money will come to us in different increments as we do the requisitions, is what I understand through the process, but we will only do one budget amendment for the entire amount.
So that would suffice one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thanks.
And just to clarify that point, Mr. Mayor, we'll do one budget amendment, but we're going to get the money in increments.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, there was in that meeting, we were supposed to get a proposal letter, or an allocation letter back from the county? Did they give you a date on that?
No, sir, they're gonna meet with their board, and I suspect we would get it after the board approves it.
Why in increments? How come we won't get it all at once?
It's gonna be after send over the requisitions, and from our understanding, there's gonna be a board that'll approve the requisitions, make sure we have all the proper documentation. So as we send over the requisitions, they're gonna send us the money, is my understanding.
What they just wanted they just wanted a process to have the greatest likelihood of success for a federal audit. And so they want to ensure that the money we're requesting is, bulletproof. And so they're going to, both the town and the county are going to go through exactly the same process. We'll have a representative on this committee that's setting up. It's, based upon what I heard Friday, I felt a lot better after the meeting Friday than I did reading news reports about the intentions. So I think it's going to work pretty well.
Mr. Mayor? Sure. The proposal that we're coming up with is the template that they'll use to determine that we're drawing funds based on that template. So that's the way that is actually going to work. We expend first, then reimburse.
Correct.
And also in that, when we had our meeting, they're also setting aside another $40,000 to do the audit in case we need an audit at the end of when we disperse all the money for the CARES Act, then the county and them will either do an audit or maybe they won't have to do an audit. We don't know yet. So anyway, we set aside money for that purpose as well as the chamber at this point. So that's where we're at on that at this point. I think things will be proceeding pretty quickly, at least that's the way I understand it, that we should be able to start dispensing sometime around the first of the month, 1st of July, is that correct? Maybe soon.
That's the goal, as quickly as we can. Yes, sir. Well, we definitely wanted to wait till next fiscal year.
Right.
So we can probably start the process. Once we get the approval letter from the county, we can start the process for the public hearing. We're kind of getting into item number 2 as well, but we're not going to wait on the system that we're going to use for the local recovery. We're going to go ahead and start, Mr. Wilson and I are going to go ahead and start immediately finalizing that process.
Okay. Any other questions? Next item tonight is local economic recovery.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, would it be I assume council doesn't have an issue with the chamber money coming out of the CARES Act? Is that a fair consensus? No issue. Okay. Thank you.
Second thought. Did you mention that this money before our allocation for the town will be pulled out in advance and set aside for the chamber? 30 for us, 30 for the county. So it'll be sitting there once we approve it. I hope you can hear me through this mask.
That brings up another question. Does that also have to come to the council for approval for the 30,000?
It would have to get formal approval.
Pardon?
Yes, it will.
Okay, now, is that gonna come anytime soon, or is that you gonna wait till after the?
Well, we can take it to the next meeting.
My understanding is we'll have to do it all at once with, when we approve the budget amendment for the CARES Act. It would all be done at that point in time. We would approve the audit and the money for the chamber, but my understanding is Warren County's not going to hold up the money going to the chamber for that.
Good. Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah, that's a good question. Where did that end? Was it No, the county was going to have us appropriate the 30,000 and then reimburse us. Is that how it ended, the conversation? I know we went around.
It ended that they were going to take our portion out of the top, so it wouldn't hold up the process for the chamber.
That's right, because we said, why don't you just go ahead and stroke the
Yes.
60,000 on a check?
Correct.
That's right. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I think we're good.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the first one? Next item tonight then is the.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Oh, I can hear you. Okay, the second item tonight is the local economic recovery plan. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been around and around on this. As you recall, in April, Mr. Wilson and I presented to you a draft of the framework for how this program could work. Mr. Wilson and I met again today. We believe we still are in agreement that this is a really good framework for how to disperse up to $1 million that we believe was the council's intent to disperse to businesses, and put the greatest emphasis on those businesses that were considered non-essential, in which they were impacted the greatest. Now, we have 2 businesses in town of Farm Royal in particular that still, based upon the last executive order, still cannot open. I mean, so there are businesses here significantly suffering. The question we have is the third party that's going to be used to administer the funds. Mr. Wilson and I are still of the belief that the code requires a third party to administer the funds. So in other words, the town of Farm Royal can't just run the program ourselves. In all other jurisdictions, a third party is administering the funds. We talked about the Chamber of Commerce as being one of the organizations to administer the funds. Based upon legal research, we have the ability to have them administer the funds on our behalf. We've also, at the last meeting, we've talked about possibly forming a local EDA. And technically, a local EDA could administer the funds. The challenge I see is the timing of it all. It would be my interest or my suggestion that we start moving towards utilizing the Chamber of Commerce to administer the funds. And should the council decide to form its local EDA or town of Farm Royal EDA, and should we still have time left in the process, we could divert the remaining amount of the recovery money to our local EDA and let them administer it, or we could decide to keep it with the Chamber of Commerce, whatever your pleasure is. BJ, I know that hit all the highlights of what we wanted to talk about on this.
Yes, the only other thing that we had discussed was maybe an additional allocation for the essential businesses that had closed.
Yeah, you may want to show that. Do you have copies of that?
Yeah.
Can you help with that?
Somewhere. So what Matt has there is we're proposing maybe additional allocation for the non-essential businesses that have closed. What the program would do is for those businesses that were forced to close, would allocate them an additional 50% of the assistance to those businesses. If we were to follow the same guidelines with $1 million being the original allocation, to give those additional 84 potential businesses, the 50% would equate to an additional $241,000. I'm not sure if that's something we want to entertain, or if we want to maybe scale back the number of businesses that we would be able to serve. These are just some options that we're throwing out there for some discussion points.
BJ, going back to this question, each one of these businesses is going to have to come in and request, is that correct?
Yes, there's an application process that we're proposing. They would have to show a financial hardship, disclose what kind of business they have there if they were required to close, and then go through an entire process, and then there would be a selection committee that would review those applications and determine which businesses would or would not qualify for it.
What if you give, say just for instance, a business, say $5,000, and then 30 days later he shuts the doors? What happens?
Unfortunately,
Is there any forethought in that?
No, it's a grant program, so I mean it would be part of the selection process. They would have to show their business plan. I think is one of the criteria. But if they were to up and close, unfortunately, we would be out that money.
Yeah, there is, as Mr. Wilson said, there is a suggestion in here when we finalize the process. What is your plan moving forward? And so that would get weighted. And if they didn't really have a good plan moving forward, then the perhaps they wouldn't get funded. But again, the highest priority is going to the essential businesses, not essential businesses that were forced to shut down. That's the highest priority. And then remaining funds can go towards, other businesses that apply and meet certain criteria.
So,
Yeah, and it's not, and I'll be the first to admit, it's not a perfect process. It's, we did a lot of research in a lot of different jurisdictions, to try to find out, other ways of handling the process.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, there's 84 businesses that are continued to be closed that would need the additional assistance that's being allocated for $241,000.
That we would be able to assist 84 additional businesses.
Up to 84?
Yeah, we could assist based on this outline here for, so many in each of those tiers.
When would we pull the trigger on, let's say we start doing this, and there we have, 1.2 million to dole out, and in the first month, let's say we dole out $300,000 or something to that effect. How fast could we move forward with like a round 2 or a round 3? Do we have a plan for that to fully exhaust those funds to those businesses? Because we kind of did I don't mean this in a despairing way, but we kind of did a shot in the dark on the dollar amounts. And you're correct. To make sure that we can cover all of the businesses. So is there a plan to be able to cycle this?
Yeah, so the application process is going to be a streamlined application process. We believe we can do it all online. So I believe the window is 2 weeks.
Yes.
We're going to allot a 2-week window to accept applications. And I believe it was a very quick, 1 week or?
Yeah, we're looking at another week.
Another week to review, and then the 4th week, cut checks. So and as they come in, we'll just keep that process moving. So the nuance, not the nuance, but the decision I need tonight is the third-party entity. Do we want to continue to go ahead and move forward and start developing it and identifying the volunteers at the chamber to assist? Or did you want to wait and see what happens with the local EDA, and then we do it all through our local EDA? And again, I'm not suggesting that this is the latter, but I believe that is a viable option. And frankly, the third option on the table is to use the Town Farm Royal Warren County EDA. That is probably another third party that's viable. We could also use FREBA as a 501c6, so that's another option. I have approached them in the past. They don't believe they have the structure to handle it. The chamber said they felt they could have the structure. We had a good meeting with their CPA who assisted in some of the details of the draft. So really what I'm looking for tonight is direction from the council of how you want to move forward with setting up the process so that, we have COVID-19 slowly behind us, and we have planning for March behind us, and now we can start working on this.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I believe that a few weeks ago I said, or a week ago I said that I would love to be able to see us roll this out through our local EDA, but based on the timeline of that happening, and if it happens, I would hate to hold up the process. And so I would be more in favor if the chamber is willing to allow the chamber to go ahead and do this, and if and when we're able to get a local EDA established, we can take it back over, so take that burden back off the chamber. But I think that they're one of the best positioned groups to be able to facilitate this process in our community. So I'm okay with that as we're looking to bridge the gap.
Mr. Mayor, I'm okay with the chamber facilitating this as long as they're in agreement and they're willing to do this for us. Because again, it may take a while, as Mr. Tetrick was saying, to get our EDA running. And again, I just don't want to hold this up for our businesses in town.
Matt, I have a question. The $1 million that we have in the general fund for reserve, that will be our expenditure vehicle
Yes,
and reimbursed by the county when we meet those guidelines.
yes, sir,
Okay, I want to make sure everybody knew that. We've discussed it.
yes.
The other thing we've discussed is the format that you're discussing now. Now, I got to be assured that the chamber has the personnel to handle the responsibilities we're talking about. Are we going to, we, the town staff, going to monitor the applications? Or does that go to the chamber? And then they have a board?
Yeah, so, good questions. In preliminary conversations with the chamber and BJ, we didn't want to go that next step until we knew that we were actually going to be spending the money. So if you notice, we've had this item on several work sessions, just keeping it moving forward. Now that I know the sense of council, that you do want to use the chamber, I'll schedule a meeting immediately with them, and we'll fine tune the exact process that we're going to utilize. I'll send it out to all of you, so you can see the exact process, how large of a committee do we need. I know the finance department is going to be heavily involved with it, for sure. And as far as how the monies flow, the utility piece of this, that's part of our original draft, it's my assessment that's a very creative way to help business owners at the same time recover money into our electric fund. There's still some question whether or not we can technically do that under the CARES Act. Mr. Wilson, there's a task force that's been formed in the Commonwealth of Virginia regarding the CARES Act. I believe Wednesday, the first meeting. Is it this week, the task force?
Yes, I believe so. It was a brief conversation I had with VML. VML did form a task force for some other municipalities that are going to be answering many of the questions that we and other localities have. The answers to those questions are supposed to be out later this week. Hopefully they'll nail down whether the utilities and how to go about.
Yeah, so based upon our reading of the CARES Act, we believe we can write it in such a way, the final documents in such a way to have the first of the monies come to pay their electric bills, back due balances should they have them. I think that's an item that we can adjust fire very quickly. If we find out that it's not covered under the CARES Act, I'm not going to allow that to slow us up. But there's a couple things that we still need to work through and ensure full compliance.
I'm very concerned with that piece of our stipulation. It keeps the money in the town. The public probably is not aware that we have a plan in our stipulation to assist people that cannot pay their electricity bill. Because in 90 days, that electricity is going to be cut off if they can't pay their bill. I've had business owners downtown that have told me they don't have 3 months of electricity, they don't have the dollars to pay. So part of our stipulation was to assist them in that manner, to keep their electricity on. So I want to make sure we get that into the proposal.
Just to clarify, the utility shutoffs will begin July 1st. It's not 90 days. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, you're right. We gave them 90 days. That's why the ones I've talked to said they did not have 3 months of funds to pay their electricity. Sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make one comment about this recovery plan. As you all know, when we were discussing this along the way, I did not have a huge amount of support from citizens about giving $1 million out of our reserves. I think too, in the beginning when people were sharing that with me, we were kind of early on in the pandemic. I don't know if anybody realized it was really gonna drag out and affect people as much. So I'm just want to make sure the citizens are clear, as Councilman Seelock said, that this money would be money coming from the CARES Act, which is actually specifically set up for this purpose. So this wouldn't be money that, this would not be money from the reserves that the citizens have put in themselves. So Does that make sense for you all, what I was saying? Hopefully it makes sense to the citizens, so I just wanted to be clear about that.
I have a question for Ray or Nikki. Oh, sorry. How many employees do you all have down there?
Right now, we have,
Microphone.
and,
Dwayne wants you to move up to the
yeah,
microphone.
well, okay.
Go ahead, you got it. I'll go with you. I got you.
Yeah, come with me, Ray.
All right. Sorry, Dwayne.
Right now, I'm the employee. We do have one employee who's on furlough, and we have a whole lot of energetic volunteers. So we do have 15 board members who are actively involved in everything that we do. So we had a conversation a while ago about what you're talking about right now. And Ray, of course, was the board member who stepped up and said, if we do that, that's sort of going to be his baby. So
Yeah, we'd be happy to entertain the fact of running that program for you. We feel like it's our duty. It's something we could do for the town and the county, as a matter of fact. So we only meet as a board monthly. The executive committee, we meet quite frequently after about every 2 weeks. We're in meetings one way or another. So I think we really need some direction, by the way, Matt, for that. We'd quite, to handle that. We welcome with open arms.
And our accountant, Mike Noble, with Noble and Noble, I meet with Mike every Friday, and we had a phone conversation, and Mike also volunteered to assist with that program should that get up and running, so he would be happy to help with that as well.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you.
So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you for being willing to do that too.
It's tough to be on the spot here, by the way.
Anybody else? All right, we'll go to item 3 this evening, 17th Street, Shandor Avenue, slip lane for Sheets Proprietors.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as we all know, Sheets is moving along quite well. There's been discussion about the possibility of putting a slip lane in at the 17th and Shandor Avenue intersection. There was some delay in order to get the right-of-ways worked through. I believe Mr. Napier can probably speak to that. I'm very pleased to say I think we have a lot of progress with the actual right-of-way of the slip lane. It might be helpful is Rodney still here? Would you come up and, if you would, brief council on the slip lane and be prepared to answer any of their questions. But I think it'd be important to get an idea of what the purpose of the slip lane is, what the purpose is not, and then determine the path forward, whether or not we do want to go ahead and start the construction of it, or whether we want to wait. My recollection, and this was literally right when I started, probably the first week in this role as interim town manager. It was my recollection that the intent of the slip lane was to have funds set aside, some funds set aside by Sheets, that in the event the town of Front Royal determined it needed a slip lane, that we would move forward to do that. We've actually moved forward quite well. We're in the process of formalizing the necessary right-of-way easements and whatnot, but would you just remind council what it is and where it's located?
Yes, sir. The slip lane is on 17th Street, so if you're coming up to the stop sign, there would be a little concrete island, and where the flag poles and the lights are out the bank, that would be wide back. So that way, if cars come down 17th Street, if there's people trying to go left, they wouldn't get backed up. You could still turn right and go out of town. And you'd be able to stack probably 2 or 3 cars turning left before it would start to back up again.
So as it relates to the cars turning left, an idea that staff has discussed that might be something to experiment is to put a sign up, no left turn, as it currently is, and determine whether or not that's going to cause a greater problem for the neighborhood, or it's my understanding, talking to some of the neighbors, we actually have a staff member that lives in that neighborhood who informed me that not many people turn left as it is because it's dangerous. It's a very dangerous left-hand turn coming out of that intersection. You're crossing two-lane road. It's high volume traffic. Frankly, I'm surprised, this wasn't, improving that intersection wasn't part of Sheetz' responsibility, but I think the issue was Sheetz had a by right use to do what they did, and I think we're probably lucky to get the money that we did receive. But I wanted to open up for council for discussion. I know, Mr. Mayor, you and I and Mr. Seelock, we've talked a lot about this during our weekly meetings, but just want to get the sense from council. Do you want us to continue to move forward and plan to build it? Or do you want to put a sign up, no left-hand turn, and just take a look and determine at a future point, once Sheetz is built, what kind of impact that's having on that intersection?
Matt, when isn't she supposed to open sometime next month?
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah, so how long would it take if we decided to do this? How long would it take to do it right?
Yes, and put out the bid, so how,
As I say, time to get your engineering done and stuff.
60, 90?
So, in other words, it wouldn't be just a cluster, you know what, if we decided to wait till Sheetz is open to do this. So we can't do this in-house?
We don't even have it right away yet.
Oh,
So, I mean, that's been part of the challenge in this process is, we met with the appropriate owner early on, and they're donating the land, by the way. It just took time for them to give the approval.
And we could probably do the concrete with the asphalt, they probably won't let us do, since we don't have a paver. Because you got the mill back out to Shenandoah, whenever the island, and smooth it out.
so we do everything with paving?
I mean, we could try to do the concrete work and stuff in the house, yeah.
The utility work? We have to move utilities?
Electric. But I think David was planning on doing.
So, don't we have a contractor we use for paving already, or will we have to put that out for bid?
We'd have to go out to bid, because it's getting ready to go, 24th is the end of the contract. Once they do steel and Scott, it'll be finished.
But we could still go ahead and use town forces and build it. And let it be gravel until such time we get the contractor to come in and pave it. I'd like to see us continue. We talked about that before, and we wanted to put off the one on the Commerce Avenue and get this one ahead of that one. So I'd like to see us begin to start moving whatever utilities has to be moved and begin the operation and beginning to get this thing moving forward. Because again, Sheetz is going to be open in another 30 days or so. And I think we need to get moving along if we're going to do anything.
Mr. Mayor, I pushed very hard in our meetings to have this lane in at the same time Sheetz opens. I'm very concerned about those tankers turning, even if they do go out to the right from Sheetz. We're always complaining about 6th Street can't turn onto Commerce. Look at that tanker coming out of Sheetz, and I've watched them down there just recently. We need to move forward instead of hesitating. We need to widen that lane if nothing else, because those tankers are going to take a lot of room to move forward, and even turning right. And I recommend that they turn right, they come out of Sheetz into the lane and turn right. Because if they try to get into that flow coming out directly from Sheetz, that creates more accident possibilities, more pedestrian issues. Those are my concerns. That's why I voiced my opinion that we needed to have, the same time Sheetz open, we needed to have the lane in there. If nothing else, we need a wider lane in there.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say that I've spoken with a citizen on 17th Street, actually several times throughout this process. And I think in the beginning, maybe some of the citizens on the street weren't even aware Sheetz was coming in, and for whatever reason. And then it's coming in, and then we're talking about impacting how they're going to get in and out of their street. And I actually spoke with them again today and said, what would a no left turn sign do for, wow, with that? And just asking how many people do they see moving on the street going towards the left? And the answer was, when there's not a lot of traffic, I can pull out to the left. But otherwise, they would, go back to the end of 7th Street, Teen Street, and come around. So, if we can put in a slip lane there and it's safe, I wish we could, just because I feel like the people on 17th Street are already, have a big impact from having sheets now on their street, that I would hate for it to also then inconvenience them to change how they move in and about off their street. And they can always make the choice if they want to make a left or not make a left, but if there's more information about the complication of doing that, then I'm certainly open to it. But I know Mr. Seelock and I had been discussing how we were hoping this would move along sooner, so.
Matt, going back to that, I think we need to wait on the left turn lane until each time we get it built, see how the flow looks like, and then something that morning, and we can consider that at that time.
Absolutely.
But I do believe that we need to get moving quickly as possible to get this thing started and get the utilities moved, whatever has to be done.
Yep.
I think the council, all of us agree to that pretty much.
Okay.
So the idea is we're gonna go ahead with the slip lane, but then after assess the situation of whether or not we then need to say no left turn. Is that how I hear this is going? Is that what they're saying?
I think
Okay,
you
just
need to
wanted-
look at it first before you make a rash decision to begin.
I just want to make sure I need to inform the citizens. So.
I think it might be a good idea later, but let's try it without it first. If it needs it, then we can always go
If
back.
you're gonna do the slip lane, you might as well try it. If
Yeah.
your decision was not to do the slip lane and try the no left turn first, that was the option as well.
But I still think we need to make that lane, get that lane in there now.
We got to get the land first, right?
Got to get land
Yeah.
first.
So
So
what are we talking about there?
we're close.
They're inside now, so you know what's going on.
You know, I mean, it's really going to be heavier traffic there, and even people on 17th Street, if they want to go back out the other end to North Royal and go down, they're still going to have to cross all the way there on that turn.
Yeah, it's just not,
it's
just not a good situation.
It's not.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The fourth item tonight is blighted buildings on non-conforming lots.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Mayor, well, I'll read the summary. A potential problem can arise when a blighted building is in such a poor condition that it must be torn down rather than simply fixed up, and is a non-conforming lot as to area, size, setbacks, etc. Town code allows for buildings on non-conforming lots to be rebuilt in most sections of town, however, are not allowed in some districts. Councilman Holloway and Councilman Cockrell and staff believe there is an opportunity to incentivize redevelopment of blighted buildings in all districts of town. Since the revisions of the town code are in the zoning ordinance, council is required to refer the recommendations to the planning commission for their recommendation in a formal meeting. In short, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cockrell and Holloway have discussed with me wanting to find a way to incentivize or maximize the redevelopment of blighted buildings. As council knows, we have the blighted building ordinance, which I think is a great ordinance. We actually have our first house has formally received a letter, so the process has started up. But we still have a lot of properties throughout town, and at the request of the council members, staff and I were looking at the code, and Chris is here. In our 3 districts, and you're able to rebuild a blighted building that's been torn down on the same footprint. But in R1 you can't, and in some commercial districts you can't. And what staff believes, there's an opportunity to clean the ordinance up, make it more unified, so that no matter where the blighted building is, if it's been designated as blighted by the town planning director, then allow the property owner to tear it down and rebuild. And perhaps something that the planning commission and council can consider is not only rebuild on that same footprint in the non-conforming lot, but maybe allow them to rebuild with a 20% additional size of the footprint to incentivize the property owner to do that. So I think I got your intent well. If you have more you guys wanted to add, but I think that's what you were trying to accomplish. And so the process is, if that's what councils would like to do, it's got to go through the normal process. It's got to go to the planning commission, and they'll vet it and determine what the right formula. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add? I know I probably summarized it too much, but.
Pretty good.
You sure?
Yeah, positive.
Doug, is there anything?
No, I think that's pretty much just to allow the owner of a blighted building a little more flexibility to make it a little more profitable for him in certain circumstances.
Well, actually, I probably do have to say something, but I guess over the years with some property owners considered a blight a negative, where if they were deemed a blighted property, that it would decrease their property value. And I guess my suggestion would be more of an incentive to give them an option to actually rebuild if we deemed it needed to be rebuilt, and maybe even some tax credits down the line like we do have in the historical district for X amount of period. They waive some property taxes or so forth. So instead of making it a negative, make it an actual positive for some of these properties that are out there. We've had a few properties come off the derelict structure just because the property owners are just now starting to do repairs and rebuild and so forth. So I think it's a good opportunity to take a negative and actually make it into a positive.
I think you're right, Chris. You know, we had a problem with signs on the same issue. If a person couldn't build it back, then the sign just had to be removed, and then they couldn't build anything. So I think if we can help the property owners by allow them to rebuild back, I think that's a very big positive move for us. Because that's the only way that they're going to be able to build is for us to change an ordinance to allow them to do that.
I think it's a win-win.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it, is it's gonna help the property owners, but it's also gonna help those in the neighborhood. And it's also gonna, in turn, help us, get some of this property back.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing.
I think it's great because a lot of these properties, the structure's on them 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And the setbacks then, if there were setbacks, totally different from today. So if they come back and, tear that structure down, build on the same, setback as it was back then, the same footprint, make it more profitable for them and, make a big improvement in the community.
Good. You have 6 examples in your packet of the kind of structures we were talking about and the size of the lots and how it's non-conforming. And so I hear your intent, and we'll start the process and get it through the plan,
Talking about go ahead and put that on the consent agenda for the next meeting.
Great.
Usually that's how we do it. We always put them on the consent agenda to move them over to the planning commission.
Okay.
Okay, and the last item tonight is review of the FY20 revenues. BJ? Matt, whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm still ready.
Okay.
Good, BJ, please.
Very good. So we're, in response to the COVID-19, council requested that we put the money over to contingency for the fiscal year 20 budget, and we review these revenues monthly with council. So that's exactly what we brought forward here. Going down through the revenues. I guess just to keep things short here, all of the funds are still above the contingency balances with the exception of sewer. Sewer is below the contingency balance and is expected to continue, maybe recover a little bit, but again, that's just a reiteration as to why we need to have our sewer rates increased like we did this evening. Moving down here to the bottom, the delinquent utility accounts. Delinquent utility accounts, the number of active delinquent utility accounts we have as of May 2020 is 2,022, with the dollar value associated with those accounts $841,441.54. The number of delinquent utility accounts is relatively stable month over month. What is concerning is the dollar value associated with those delinquent utility accounts. April of 2020 here, we had about 660,000 in delinquent utility accounts. So just in the period of 1 month, it's increased $175,000. Normally, I would say that our figure for delinquent utility accounts is between $300,000 and $400,000. I don't have that number historically because we have changed our bad debt procedures over the last couple of years, but I do believe it's around the $300,000 to $400,000 mark because we are quarterly writing off approximately $20,000 there. But going back to the revenues, like I say, general fund revenues do look pretty good. The other funds are doing okay, with the exception of sewer. But sewer does have a healthy fund balance that should be able to account for that revenue loss there. So what we're recommending is to look at the contingency fund, mainly in the general fund area, and move some of those funds over to some items to help move forward, as Ms. Cockrell was questioning earlier there. What we're requesting and recommending is for the police department, the public safety, the answering point, the PSAP, to put in $100,000 for that project. Police department consoles, it does say $80,000 in the agenda packet. We only really need $12,000 to move forward with that project due to something the police department has worked out with the vendor. Police department body cameras, we're recommending allocating $20,000 for that to move forward with the program for replacement that we'll be bringing back to council in the future. Tourism marketing, $62,000 is what we're recommending. I know that says $50,000 as well, but $62,000 is what we're recommending for the tourism marketing. Tourism consultant, $25,000, and then the blighted buildings, changing that from $25,000 to $46,000, and then adding $35,000 for a police vehicle that was included in the fiscal year 21 budget that we removed. So what we're looking to do is hopefully recoup some of the items that we've removed from the budgets for the contingency and start building some of these items back in. A total of $300,000, which would leave for the fiscal year 20 budget $207,000 in contingency for the general fund.
So just to add to what, thank you, BJ. Just to add to what BJ just said, here's a perfect example of why you did what you did and how it's working. And I'm very pleased to say that our initial projections of revenue shortfall is not as great as we initially thought. So we feel pretty comfortable between now and the end of the fiscal year that we can take $300,000 of the 507 and go ahead and get the money allocated to for these various purposes. The police department public safety answering point, the PSAP, you don't have a lot of background on that. As you may recall, a couple weeks ago, the Warren County 911 system was down, and all the calls were being routed to Rappahannock County and then back to Front Royal. They actually had a deputy in our office, and they're dispatching from our office. It's we were actually in the process of looking at one day preparing for a PSAP. And the county has their system, they're upgrading their system currently, and they're putting servers and they're putting some equipment into our space and getting the fiber to our building, etc. So now's a perfect opportunity, in our opinion, staff's opinion, unanimous opportunity to go ahead and move forward so that we're able to be a secondary, so that in the event they go down, we'll be able to dispatch directly, receive calls. The police department consoles, that's $12,000 expenditure for modifications to the consoles. As BJ said, we were able to negotiate that price down from $80,000 to $12,000. The body cameras is something I think you guys have already been aware of in the previous year's budget. Tourism marketing, tourism consultant. Look, we've got to kickstart our economy. Both. We're getting closer to the point of where we're going to start promoting for tourists actually to come in to our community, as well as kickstarting our local residents and getting them to spend money locally first. The tourism consultant, frankly, that is a new item. As you know, we don't have anyone directly spearheading the tourism initiatives currently, I had hoped that we would have been much further along with the final outcome of tourism. I think COVID-19 and there's a lot of delay with the Joint Tourism Board, but I'm very pleased to say, and Mr. Gillespie and Ms. Thompson had a very positive meeting, I think. It seems like both town and county are going in the same direction, which is to outsource tourism activities, for lack of a better term. I believe there's an opportunity to retain the services of an individual or group to kind of help guide that effort in the short term, maybe a 3-month contract. At the same time, help with the marketing efforts, help the Joint Tourism Board. I floated that past a couple members of the Joint Tourism Committee. They thought it would be an asset. We have the funds, so it's our recommendation that we allocate it there. The blighted buildings, we took the money out of the budget, we're adding it back into the budget, and the PD vehicles in there. I don't necessarily need council approval for these items because they're in contingency that we can spend the money towards it, but I do think it's good. I feel better, you guys, knowing what the intent is and why we're spending the money the way we're suggesting.
Mr. Teacher, I'd like to bring up a point about the tourism committee. There's a delay, and I actually think they did a good job of waiting till they had all of the information and the way Carrie presented and put the structures together. So I'm glad they didn't make any rash decisions like a week later.
Yep. No, I agree. I think there's been a lot of forethought into it, and I'm very pleased with the direction we're heading.
Any others?
The only comment I want to make is Mr. Wilson answered a phone call for me today because when I was about the delinquent utility accounts, my initial thought was that meant that's how much we were delinquent since the pandemic hit. So I was relieved to hear that we weren't, it wasn't as drastic as I thought. However, as he shared, it is about $175,000 more than what it would be, say, this regularly is.
Well, it's actually probably about $400,000 more
That's-
than regularly. It's $170,000 more than just April.
But you said as far as the delinquent accounts, the number themselves have really not changed that much, right?
That's correct.
It's the amount.
That's correct.
So,
Just month over month increases is what we're seeing. It's, those that have not paid just, consistently are not paying, it seems, over the past few months, and that's what we're seeing.
so
we halt the shut-offs too, and
Yes,
that's
that's
the biggest.
yeah.
We halt the shut-offs, and then they just keep using these services, and so that's.
Yes, the number of payment agreements has gone down drastically as well. Normally, we're doing about 540 payment agreements a month. Just in May, we only did 120. So not doing those shut-offs has had a significant impact on our receivables.
And they're aware, are citizens aware that on July 1st, that all changes? I'm just wondering.
Every utility bill that we're sending out has a notification in it. And
Okay.
we've done public notice, spoken about it here tonight. So we do have the public outreach to inform people before the disconnect actually occurs.
Hopefully the media will include that as well. So I just wouldn't want anybody to,
Yeah, we're doing our very best to get the notice
Right.
out there.
There was just a lot of discussion on social media about the taxes being paid late because the county did a different extension than we did, and lots of people were asking questions about it, so I just would want to make sure they know about the cutoff.
And Ms. Cocker, if I could add about the July 1 shut-offs. I think I wrote a letter about that. Wasn't that the letter I wrote that you're putting into the utility?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Yeah, so I actually sent a letter out, and I want council to know, and I think it's important the community knows, our finance department bends over backwards to work with citizens. We recognize the situation we're in. We're not trying to come in with a big stick, but we do need to start working out payment plans and solutions for citizens that are, 90 days past due. It's just the way it has to be at this point. Again, I would encourage any citizen that is delinquent and receives a notice, please call ahead of time. Don't wait until July 1st. Call ahead of time. We've had citizens coming in. Last week, I know there were several stop me in the hallway.
Yes,
And,
yes, it has increased in the last week since our notifications have gone out. So hopefully as we build this month, the citizens will certainly be aware.
So is the idea that as long as they're making an effort to repay some of it, is that, or no? Kind of
We compromise as best we can.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
each case is individual and there are, different
Okay.
criteria we look at, but we do the best we can with the citizens.
Thank you.
Matt, could we have that posted on our Facebook page? Maybe, a couple times a week, until July 1 or even after that?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I think we're trying to change the image of our Facebook page, is more of a positive image than.
Well, a lot of people say, well, I don't watch the meetings, or I don't pay attention to the junk mail, or whatever.
I don't want that one.
You could say they were giving everybody a chance to pay their bills and be encouraged.
Yeah, we have the letter drafted, so that'll be fine. I'll get it on. Any other questions?
Okay, that was our last item. Has anybody got any discussion questions? If not, meeting adjourned.